how is it actually like to live in a car like this in a country where there's nothing stable at all about the weather. First of all, I think that you as a person need to be able to look at the whole experience as a positive thing, no matter how it actually looks and feels to others. And I think that's kind of how it has to be if you want to live and travel out of a car like this, because stuff was built a bit differently back then. For example, do I know if this car will start right now? Not really. But if it doesn't start, I'll be able to figure out why and fix it. But after a full restoration and now having done more than 1,200 miles with this, I actually do know for a fact that this will start. That's pure luck. So I think that using your own free will to do something purely for yourself is something that everyone should at least try to achieve once in their lifetime. And to me, that might be something as silly as getting rid of all of my belongings, buying and building an old British tractor like this, getting in said tractor and just driving wherever I feel like, whenever. And to you, might be something else. And of course, it's not fast, it's not silent, it's not crazy comfortable, it doesn't have any fancy gadgets, but it is a car perfectly capable of being parked outside of a mansion. But at the same time, you can turn around, drive through Africa, and the car will never look out of place. There's something about the traveling budget on this trip that isn't sustainable, and it has nothing to do with the car, but it actually has to do with something as uninteresting as cell reception. Because in a lot of the places I go, I'm not able to connect to anything, which is usually a good thing. But now that I'm filming and uploading these on a regular basis, I am running into some logistical issues behind the scenes. Because where can I find Wi-Fi when all of the remote places I drive to has absolutely zero reception? Towns. And that is absolutely unproblematic, but at the same time, it is kind of causing some issues, because when I get to these places, I do want to stay here for a while. And right now I could pull out my laptop and pretend that I'm going to order a Starlink, but I can't because there's no cell reception up here. But like an early morning's cooking show, I've prepared it up front. And I did that while sitting in the car outside of a grocery store after I had done some shopping, whilst also using their Wi-Fi to upload a video. And that's not cool or cinematic. And some of the point with these videos is that they're supposed to show everything, and that includes showing how everything is working whilst you're actually living in a car full time and not just going on weekend camping trips. But it's not like I'm going to avoid towns at all costs, but it is kind of necessary driving there for the sake of using the internet. And of course there's a different logistical issue as well, because I don't have a mailbox. Well, actually I have two mailboxes, but I don't have the ability to receive mail. So right now I'm in the middle of nowhere. Let's call this point A. And on Monday, I'll receive a receiver, funny enough, in town B. And the Starlink will be delivered the 1st of July in town C. And that is easy to sort out, because when I'm ordering something, I'm just choosing an unmanned service point wherever in the country I feel like. But it also means I need to space out my travels, so I'm in the right place at the right time. So right now I'm waiting for a diesel heater from Germany, a battery bank from the States, a microphone receiver from Norway, and the Starlink from Norway. And all of these 4 packages are delivered to different locations. And you might wonder how I ended up in this situation, but it was actually kind of the plan, because like mentioned in the first episode, I started to use and travel with the car before it was actually done, because I was just eager to get out again. So right now you can look at my travels as a really complicated version of orientation, because I'm just driving around collecting checkpoints. And as soon as I've sorted all of those items, the car is pretty much done and I can start to do some actual traveling, but it's never finished. It does look like the evening might actually stay like this, and as long as the wind stays calm like now, this may be one of the better evenings I've had in a while. And since I had to visit the store to get Wi-Fi, tonight I'll be able to make pasta with pesto. And there's also a bunch of small trout in the river right next to me. Not huge, but edible. And I do have a bunch of fish soup starters. So I should definitely get a rod for the car. This is so absolutely not a fancy meal, but it's really easy and also really nice. And like mentioned a bunch of times now, one pot wonders just makes life on the road a lot easier, considering there's only one dish to clean, or two with the fork. I had kind of forgotten about this, but it's the 21st of June right now, meaning this is the longest day of the year. And I'm not that far north, but I'm far enough north that the sun is setting quite late in comparison to Central Europe. And the national park I'm in right now is a little past 62 degrees north, meaning that the sun is setting pretty much spot on at 11 o'clock tonight. But there is some mountains blocking the actual sunset. So on my horizon, because of the mountain, the sun is setting about 9:30. And I think that's enough. And north is there, meaning that about 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, the sun will rise straight above the car. But it is going to take another 30 minutes or so before it's high enough above the horizon so that I can actually see the sun because of that hill. I just made myself a last cup of tea and I'll crawl into bed before the sun sets, which is in probably 10-20 minutes. And I usually sleep the other way around, but right now the view out the back of the car is too nice not to enjoy.
It's 6 o'clock sharp, and as you can tell, I'm waking up due to the sunrise going through these alpine windows. I have thought about making some blinds for them, but for now it's kind of nice waking up when the sun is shining through them. It is kind of cold now, but it's blue skies, no wind, and the sun is shining, so rise and shine. And it's been cold enough tonight that there is frost on the table next to the car. Happy midsummer, I guess. I use every opportunity I have to air out the car, so now I'll just let it be fully open with the doors whilst the sun is slowly heating up the car and airing out the air inside of there. And back here, where the sun hasn't shone yet, there's more frost. I'll make some coffee and some oats, and right now the temperature in the shadow is about 1 degree plus. But that's the good thing with direct sunlight on mornings like this, because I'll move it to the sun and wait a couple of minutes and it's going to be something completely different. The agenda for today is to slowly pack up and start driving towards the mountains, but as mentioned before, when the weather is nice, stop and appreciate that, because you never know when it's going to rain again. Actually, I do know. It's tomorrow. Apparently the car works as a chimney now, which is nice. I do like to have a million of these pre-packed oatmeal bags because they do have milk powder, they're pre-portioned, they have blueberries, so they are really nice for lazy mornings like this. And yes, the air temperature is just past freezing, but here in the sun, it's actually more than 20 degrees, as long as I do have direct sunlight. And this entire meadow full of bushes is thawing now, so there's absolutely zero bugs around. And fingers crossed for a full day like this. I can live off that for a week. Right now I'm kind of surfing on a wave of everything just functioning as it's supposed to, because after a restoration there will obviously take some time before weird hiccups starts to accumulate. But to be fair, when I bought the car it was in terrible shape, but after replacing all of the fuel, doing the ignition and changing oil, I fired it straight up and drove 500 kilometers the very next day. So even when these are in pretty rough shape, they will still function. It's going to leak and all of that, but they did that from the factory, to be fair. But the unsettling thing is that every single time I'm using the car, I'm doing all of these checks, but I never find anything. So I'm a bit afraid that I will become more lazy over time and overlook something catastrophical. Or not. A lot of people only use their old cars for special occasions, meaning that there's a period of time in between each time they're driving the car. But since I'm driving mine constantly, I'll notice every single change to the car. Like last week I had a passenger and I was trying to figure out why the car was shifting so weird. And after a while I realized, oh, those extra 65 kilos made the whole difference. And that made my spidey sense go off because I thought there was something wrong with the car. And there is one guy sleeping in a tent over there, so whilst the car is heating up, I'll just park it way over there. That extra spluttering you might have heard is because when the choke is on, the fuel mixture is completely off, so it's running way too rich. But now with that turned off, it's running a lot smoother, but the car is still heating up. And it's not like I can't use the car in the heat up phase, it just runs a lot better afterwards. Just pulled over to eat some flatbread with some toppings, and I'm in sheep territory. This is actually the same mountain road I came down the other way around in the last episode. So when I get back to the top, I think I'll park up and do a hike, especially if the weather is like this. But I think the chance of the weather becoming bad right now is really slim. And I don't think I'll summit a mountain, but that's why this region is one of my favorite places to hike, because the terrain is just nice and mellow to walk on. But of course there is some rough hikes there as well, but it's nice having the option to just walk along a nice mellow ridge. And with that said, I'll leave the jeeps to themselves. You do get kind of spoiled when you're traveling a lot in these places, because this view is absolutely normal to me, but I can't really comprehend how this must feel if you're from a completely flat country. I was planning on hiking to the top of that hill, but it's really windy, so I've changed the plan to hiking to the end of this open field, because at the end of that, I think I might get a view of the valley I just drove up from. And because that hike is kind of flat, I'll be able to keep my base layer on, which is nice because I can really feel the extra altitude I just gained. And if the weather is better later on, I can still hike up that hill. But I do actually think there's a lot of weather coming my way from the west coast. And here I thought I would be getting a full day of sun. I wouldn't really classify this as a hike, it's more of a normal walk. So I'll bring nothing. And this is almost as flat as it gets, but there is one top in that direction, so I'll at least walk towards that. And the landscape here is so vast that it takes some time before you get used to estimating how far it is between rocks and different hills. But hiking here is so much more enjoyable than hiking up steep hills all the time. I think I can get a view of the valley all the way towards the edge there, which is the last green hill before there's a new hill with some snow on. But it might not look like the landscape is changing at all, because everything here is basically the same. But this is actually the hill you saw in the distance from the car, and the car is now in the distance over by the snow. The last hill I'm doing is to my right now, but this landscape is really pretty. So I'm kind of regretting not bringing a tent, but with the weather coming in, it wouldn't be enjoyable at all either way. And as a nod to what kind of landscape this is a part of a reindeer antler, or actually might be the whole thing from a small one. Never mind, there's actually more of a walk after this hill towards the edge, but I'm getting hungry, and that blue cloud is getting awfully close, so I'll try to make it back to the car before that makes it to me. But I'm parked all the way towards the west, and behind me there's actually some sort of a hiking path, so I'll take that and then I'll just do the remaining part on the road. Finally back on the main road, but the rest of the walk now is uphill and also against the wind, so I think I'll just rush this. And this was kind of perfect timing, because it just started to rain a bit as I reached the car, and behind the car it's no wind at all, or well, basically no wind, but on all the sides of the car it's blowing this direction, so I'm actually sheltered enough to make some food now.
So I think I'll boil half a bag of fish soup and also throw in a can of tuna, because that's the best fish I can catch up here without a fishing rod. This is the wind here in the kitchen, and that's the wind right next to the kitchen. And that's obviously not a coincidence. I knew that when I parked here. Not. And when you're car camping in winds like these or worse, you need to be careful with opening more than one door at a time, because if I open up this door now, I'll make a draft through the car, and I have almost lost a down sleeping bag that way. Almost. And I am also kind of certain that there will be rain later, so I'll make a warm meal now and just call that my dinner. And I'll just eat something in the car later whilst doing some work, because if the weather up here turns really shitty, it might be the perfect evening to do that. And if I were to camp in a tent now, I would 100% not camp here. I would pitch the tent somewhere a bit more sheltered, like close to a hill or down in a valley. And that's also why I prefer to camp inside of the car and not in a roof tent, because if the weather turns bad, I'm nestled in there safe and sound. And I'm not really known for seeking out the most tropical camps, but the views I get are really nice. And it might not be tropical, but at least I'm able to wear sandals. Lofoten fish soup, a tiny bit of pasta, and where's the fish? Instead of the tuna, I did find a can of Swedish fish balls, which is a lot better to get with this creamy fish soup. I've added a tiny amount of pasta and some salt, and I'll just let this simmer for a while. And when the pasta is done, I'll stir in maybe half of this, and at the end I'll drop in the fish balls and let those soak for a while. And like mentioned before, if you're camping in cold and brutal places, one pot wonders and food you can store forever just makes a lot more sense. The Swedish fish balls does have a lot of sauce, but I'm not going to use any of that because I'm just here for the fish. Obviously I'm not going to clean the sauce off them, so some will join the soup. So now this fish soup is pretty much done with some vegetables, pasta and the fish balls. I'll also add some salt and some bread. But you should of course not compare this to household cooking, because I am after all standing in the back of a really old car on the top of a really old mountain. And it's starting to rain. And this is actually kind of good. I've done the dishes, or the dish. So now I'll treat myself to some Norwegian chocolate, something warm to drink, and I'll get in the car and do some work, because the wind is quite brutal, but at least the rain stopped. So for now it just looks like it's going to be windy up here, and as long as there's no downpour, I actually don't care what kind of weather I have. I have this mug for a coffee membership at a gas station, but I also need to use it when I need the coffee to stay warm, because the floral mug does not retain heat. But I think it's obvious what kind of brand I need to buy a coffee mug from if I want the aesthetics to match the whole car, because nothing is a coincidence.